Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm taking your questions on rough idling, reading Volkswagen wiring diagrams, weird noises, and more. This is episode 173 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, in order to get a question on a show like this, be sure to email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject. Ask your question right at the top. Hit that enter button a few times, give me some space, and then give me the details of your question. That super helps when I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to check out the quick videos playlist on YouTube. A couple of other things before we get into the show. I'm working on a holiday gift buying guide. That'll be coming soon. Make sure you head over to the blog at humblemechanic.com. Check that out. I'll be sure to share it on Facebook and everywhere as well. So if you don't follow me on those platforms, head over there and check it out. There's always links down in the bottom where you can follow me on all of those normal social platforms. Also started a tribe on Drive Tribe, which I need to throw a link down in there as well. So if you're on Drive Tribe, check that out as well. And I'm still doing the final testing of the premium membership side. Had a few website issues to correct before we launch. So for all of you guys that have emailed me, thank you so much. You're on the list. And remember, we're gonna do something really awesome for those first 100 founding members, or some other name I'll come up with by then. So stay tuned, and thank you guys for that. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. All right, with all that wrapped up, time to do the questions. First one comes from Hillary. Hey Charles, I have a 2011 Tiguan S with 61,000 miles. Started noticing a little bit of a rough idle. I purchased some SEAFOAM spray for the throttle body. Any dangers on doing this to the throttle body? There's also a metal clip on the rim of the rubber/silicone hose. What purpose does it serve? You can see it in the small video I made. Also, do you favor putting catch cans to catch some of the nasty bits that caused the problem in the first place? If so, which brand? Anything made explicitly for my vehicle? So great questions, Hillary. I don't think anyone makes one specifically for the Tiguan. There are a lot of them out there, several different kinds. The one that I have the most experience with is the one made by Black Forest Industries, and that's probably because they are about 7 miles from where I work. So we're pretty close as far as proximity goes. I've seen it. It seems to work really, really well. It is one extra step of maintenance, but if you don't mind doing that, it can probably help out long term. As far as the clip on the clamp for the intake boot, it's there to hold that clamp onto the boot. They actually break pretty regularly, so we're often having to replace them. We normally just put a standard worm clamp on it. But as you can see, it's got tabs that almost bite into the boot, and that holds that clamp in place. Now the SEAFOAM question. This is a question that I get a lot. Does SEAFOAM work? Is it the right thing for my car? Does it cure cancer and make time travel possible? It does some things, right? It's not a bad product. It can help. It can help for cleaning the throttle body. The problem is that most of the time I don't think it's used appropriately. So I've tested at work a lot of these kind of products with several different delivery systems, whether they're in front of the throttle body, behind the throttle body. On a car like yours, a lot of them will go in the intake air temp sensor port. The problem is the way the air comes in when it's carrying this liquid, most of the time, all it does is clean the runners of cylinders 2 and 3, so the middle 2 cylinders. It has a hard time evenly being distributed throughout the intake manifold. So you may have this product that cleans cylinder 2 and 3, and it does a little bit for 1 and 4, but not nearly as much as it does on the center. The way I see products like this really benefiting a car is not as a treatment. It's more as preventative. We do this as preventative maintenance to prevent the big buildup and the big gunk deposits in the first place. Now, when it comes to cleaning throttle bodies, you can absolutely clean them with them still on the car, with the engine running, and go that route. But for me, I really like to take the throttle body off and clean it by hand. You can still use that same product, right? As long as it's safe for that plastic butterfly in the throttle body. You can still use that product. Just I really like to take it out. It's not hard. Once you get the intake boot loose, which is the hardest part on your Tiguan, it's 4 bolts and 1 connector and it comes right out. You can clean it, make sure it's completely clean instead of hoping that you got all the deposits out of it. What happens is deposits can get between the valve and the port in the throttle body and cause the throttle body to not close all the way, or maybe even as that debris gets further out, it can actually get in the bearing mechanisms of the throttle plate. It's not super common that they get that bad, but it can happen. So if it were me, what I would do is I would try it out and see with zero expectation that it would do anything. And if it helped, cool. If it doesn't, well, that's kind of what we expected to begin with. So also make sure you're using good quality fuel. Make sure, I think at 60,000 your spark plugs are due. Maybe time for spark plugs as well. Air filter, all that other fun stuff that we need to replace as maintenance on our car. Make sure that's done to reduce the amount of rough idle. And depending on how rough this idle is, you may actually have an issue that needs to be repaired beyond just normal vehicle maintenance. All right, next one comes from TJ. How do you effectively use VW track style wiring diagrams? I've been a mechanic for about 15 years and I still sit around scratching my head like a chimp every time I have to use a European wiring diagram that uses the track logic. It's hard to explain, but I have trouble wrapping my head around them. It seems like an attempt at organizing that ends up being disorganized. Have any pointers for reading them effectively? Thanks for all your videos and keep up the great work. TJ, I totally get it. Totally get it. And the reason I totally get it is because I understand those wiring diagrams very well. And then when I get something else that's not that, I'm like, I have to like travel back in time to remember how to read those. Just because when I read a VW wiring diagram, like that's what I know. So I have some incredibly good news for you. There is a site called ross-tech.com. You guys may know them as the makers of the VAGCOM Volkswagen Audi scan tool. Especially, if you're Volkswagen Audi. If you're more BMW Mercedes, you may not be as familiar. These guys are awesome. They've done some incredible work and way more work than I could possibly do to put something together for you. They have 2 10-minute videos that go through each little bit of the Volkswagen Audi wiring diagrams, from the numbers at the bottom to the circuits to the components and how to read them. I'm gonna link both of those videos up in the description. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check them out. In fact, they've done such a good job that I feel like there's no point in me doing anything more to add on to it. The only way I would see it being valuable is if we talked about a specific component. The problem there is that Volkswagen doesn't want us publishing their wiring diagrams. So even if you don't care about Volkswagen wiring diagrams, I really recommend that you go check those videos out because they're pretty funny with what they had to do to get around that Volkswagen problem. So I'm gonna throw up something here really quick. This is the guide that Ross Tech built. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Volkswagen wiring diagrams, this is kind of what it's gonna look like. You have your component, you have your power and source. A lot of times there's relays up in the section up here. You have your component IDs, all of these lines, oddly enough, for wiring. Here's your number tracks down at the bottom. Here's your list of components. Remember what I said to go check them out because it was funny? This is your list of components over here. So you can see here they basically break down each section as they add more through. So this is their training guide to reading Volkswagen wiring diagrams. Guys, if you have any concern about your ability to read these diagrams, go to their site and check it out. I had a chat with Jeff from Ross Tech at Apex, actually. We happened to oddly bump into each other about this exact thing because I get this question a lot. And they put so much work into this that I really do feel like there's no point in me doing it as well because they did a way better job than I would have done. So I'm going to just basically promote their stuff and recommend that you go check that out. It's not easy to read these wiring diagrams. All right, next one comes from Paul. I just purchased a used 2012 Touareg VR6. I really like the vehicle. I really like those new Touaregs too. I have one question. When my wife pulled into the garage the other night and shut the engine off, it made a weird thump or weird sound when shutting the engine off. Repeated, and it did it again. Is this a normal shut-off sound? The car runs awesome, never any weird sounds at all, runs very smooth. You don't really hear it from inside the car, only standing outside. Maybe that is just the way it sounds. Have never owned a VW before. Paul, incredibly good pickup on that. So what you're probably hearing is the throttle body. It used to be years ago when Volkswagen did all the self-tests of the sensors. It would, check the throttle body. It would ping all the sensors. It did that when you turn the key on. Very first key cycle. That's why when you turn a key on, they recommend, they recommend you turn the key on and wait till the lights go out in the dash instead of just rolling the key on and firing it up. What I do is I turn the key on, put my seatbelt on. By the time that's done, I go ahead and start it up because it was pinging all those sensors and all those actuators. Well, now, since I want to say like the late 2000s, I don't remember the exact year, so give me a little bit of a break. Since then, it actually does that when you shut the key off. So you're hearing the throttle body shut and then move to find its home position, or a sensor or another actuator actuating as a self-test. One of the other big concerns we got with the diesels was the fans would continue to run for an extended period of time after the car was shut off, or you'd hear like a buzzing noise, or like that same kind of noise where it sounds like a motor going and opening and closing an exhaust throttle plate. So odds are this is a normal noise. I probably wouldn't worry about it, especially if the check engine light's not coming on, but these can also be a problem. Typically you'll get a check engine light, but this is actually really normal. It's the car doing all of its self-tests, all the beep, boop, boop, boop stuff that it needs to do in order to check to make sure there's a problem. That way when you turn the key on the next time, if there was, it'll check it again, and if it still sees a problem, bing, pops the check engine light. And all right, got time for one more. This one comes from Alvaro. Having a little problem with my Mark 6 GLI. Sometimes when the car is in first gear or reverse and I start releasing the clutch, it makes a really weird noise. I've recorded a video where I was able to catch the noise when the car was doing it. All right, man, thanks for sending the video. Let's check it out.
Hello, my friend from Humble Mechanic. Hey man, I'm having a problem with this car and my clutch. Every time I put it, or not every time, sometimes when I put it on first gear or reverse, it make a weird noise. I hope that you can get it if it does it right now. Yeah, but it did it, but it was not as loud always.
All right, so awesome job on the video. I gotta say, guys, one of the hardest things about what I do here is trying to diagnose noises in a video. It's really hard for me to do, but I like trying it because it's fun to guess. So one of the reasons it's challenging is if I'm sitting in the car getting it to do it, it's not just what I hear, it's what I experience. How does the clutch release? What else is going on in the car? Can I get out of the car and listen to it in a different point? Can I put the car up in the air and listen to it between the transmission and the engine? So this is fun. So I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think this noise is in this car? My guess is one of two things. It's either the clutch slipping a little bit, maybe there's a little bit of oil on it or brake fluid on it, or the release bearing. It's not a really common release bearing sound, but it could actually be the release bearing. That's my guess because it's only happening sometimes, and it's only happening in first and reverse, and that's generally when you're putting a lot of load on the clutch. There's one other thing that I've heard of, never heard it myself, causing this kind of thing, and especially on this generation car, it's actually the crankshaft walking causing a weird issue. So you can check crank walk or crankshaft end play. I answered that question a while back in another Q&A show where I actually showed us checking it. And boy, it was like crankshaft was moving like that much, which is huge. You could see it just with your eyes. You didn't even need a dial indicator to measure the crankshaft end play. So you want to check and make sure you don't have any oil leaks to where maybe oil or something got on the clutch, and kind of go from there. If there's any other weird sensation when you're releasing the clutch, have that looked at. But man, odds are, to me anyway, based on this video, it sounds like the clutch is slipping a little bit. And that could be a problem right now. It could get worse over time. Probably won't get better. But this is something I would probably take in and have it looked at, because dropping the trans out Putting a new clutch in isn't a small job. I would get it checked out, man. I know I wish I had like the, hey man, all you gotta do is this, or this is exactly what your noise is. Sometimes we get there, but most of the time we don't, because most of the time it takes more than just like 1 or 2 duplications of a noise in a video to really pinpoint what's going on. And I'd hate for you to spend, $2 grand on a new clutch and it be something totally different. So great question. Thanks for sending the video. I always love when you guys send me pictures and videos of what's going on. It does help. And guys, if you have a suggestion, post in the comments what you think is wrong with that GLI. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, you know what to do. Hey, if you like this video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Snapchat. All right, guys, hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Drink of the day, as it's been for a really long time, is coffee. I shoot the Q&A shows in the morning generally, so 9 is a little early for a beer, but not too bad. So